Welcome to the ACT lighting segment on automated lighting for the 2021, thank goodness, NAMM Believe in Music Social Distancing Conference. We have a special guest joining us today from an undisclosed location. And for the audience members who may not be familiar with your devilishly good looks, please introduce yourself and what your role at Ayrton is.
Oh, thanks, Aaron. Well, the undisclosed location is Paris today. I made it back finally, so I've been away for quite a while. I came on the train yesterday, masked up and everything. My name is Chris Ferrante, and I'm the CEO at Ayrton.
All right, well, excellent. And Chris, how long have you been with Ayrton now?
Since 2017, so coming up to 4 years almost, on the 17th or 18th of January, in fact.
Okay, all right. Well, this kind of ties into the leading question here. Is a lot of us who are familiar with Ayrton will be watching this, since there's a lot of people that are going to be new to the lighting in general, since this is more of a music conference. Ayrton has a really long history over the years of reinventing itself more than once since it's been founded. Can you talk a little bit about the history of Ayrton, when it started, and the reinventing process that's happened over the years? And what do you see looking forward post-COVID in the entertainment industry for Ayrton?
Yeah, so I mean, it's a great question, right? I mean, we've been around since 2001, 2002-ish, founded by a gentleman called Ivan Payard. He's our CTO and founder, so he's still with the company. So I'm only been here for 4 years, and Ivan's been here since day one. And essentially, I think the best way to describe how we've reinvented ourselves is to use the way Ivan describes it, really. And basically, Ayrton's got this, Ayrton 1.0, Ayrton 2.0, Ayrton 3.0. We're currently in Ayrton 3.0. But where it all began back in the day was LED innovation. When LED lamps were basically not very bright, but Ivan decided that was the technology for the future. So we basically got on board with LED and have been on board with LED since then. So I think although we've got iterations of Ayrton, so Ayrton 1.0, 2.0, etc., there are some common threads running through that, which has always been solid state technology, so always LED. We've not developed anything without LED. And then in the future, of course, laser is also solid state technology. So that'll come along. But yes, so we started off with the very first LED moving light back in 2001, 2-ish. Wasn't very bright. Ivan himself says you could barely light the floor from the table with it. So things have, of course, moved on from there. 2.0, sort of end of the decade, so 2010-ish, 2011, is basically when we start to see some more high-powered fixtures. So the quad color LEDs in the Wild Sun series, and then really where Ayrton becomes a lot more famous, if you like, is with the effects, the Magic series of products. And the most famous one of those was the Magic Panel 602. That was the first one.
Very familiar.
And yes, and really changing the landscape from circular, which is what we were all used to in the lighting world, to square. And that might not seem, so radical, but at the end of the day, nobody was asking for a square fixture. Nobody was thinking about a square fixture. Yet Ivan decided that he could change, he could make things more creative for our lighting designer customers, and they adopted it in droves.
It certainly turned a lot of people's heads and put Ayrton on the map, per se, as a everyday word in the lighting design community.
Yes, indeed, and so with that came commercial success, which is quite exciting. So I think until then it had been quite a struggle, and also always when we talk about Ayrton 2.0, it's important that we remember Valère, who is no longer with us. He passed away, unfortunately, in 2017, just after I joined. But he was instrumental in moving us forward in terms of being commercially successful. And really, then that ties into Ayrton 3.0. Unfortunately, with his passing, but also the shift in focus now away from effect-based fixtures, these more specialist fixtures, and we took a conscious decision in 2017 to not ignore our heritage because we've still got some very clever, some very, very exciting effects-based fixtures, but essentially to refocus our efforts on a very more core market, if you like, workhorse fixtures. Yeah, fixtures which we could sell and market into the broader end. You know, everywhere from conference halls, theaters, nightclubs, up to the big rock and roll stages. You know, so not stuff just for big rock and roll.
Certainly more traditional theatrical style optics.
Yes.
Yeah. And that must have been a big gamble, you know, and you know, considering the notoriety you had prior. It's paid off.
Yes, it was a gamble. Yes, it has paid off. But equally, when we look at these things, right, I mean, the market's obviously much larger. There's also more competition. So, you know, it's a toss-up, right? I mean, you're going into a larger market, but you're also inviting much more competition. I think, though, we've got this, you know, again, this thread running through us. We're very lucky in that because we're only interested in solid state, that's all we ever do. There's no confusion. Nobody's having to look at Ayrton and go, shall we buy the metal halide, the lamp product, or shall we buy the LED product? We don't worry about lamps. We don't, you know, they had their time, they had their place. LED is where it's at. Laser is where it'll go. But we're experts at it. That's all we know about. That's what we've done. And I think that fills us with a sense of confidence, right? That we can get it right. And as you pointed out, it's been successful, and we have got it right. We continue to be very focused on the optical perfection, if you like, and you know, ensuring the optical path is as clean as possible, ensuring that, you know, everything counts, right? There isn't just one thing in a fixture that works. There isn't one thing that makes it work, but it's basically the sum of all the parts. And the same thing when we miniaturize things. That's something, another thing that we're very good at here, and something we place a lot of focus on, is making things smaller, lighter. And again, there isn't one thing that you can say, oh, we're going to change this, and now we're going to make it much smaller and much lighter. If it were like that, it'd be easy, and everybody could do it.
Yes.
And the fact is, it isn't. And you know, we do spend a lot of time, you know, basically getting millimeters. It's down to that level. It isn't about you know, the centimeters or the meters. It really is those millimeters. You know, there's an interesting parallel here, and you know, we talk at Ayrton a lot about motor racing. Of course, Ayrton Senna and all the rest of it. But from my personal perspective, I think when you look at the world of cycling, it's fascinating. Olympic cycling, everything is done in split seconds. It's milligrams. You know, it's this pursuit of perfection that makes a difference. And you know, Ivan will say, you probably heard him say it as well, you know, get to 95% isn't that difficult. It's not the 0 to 95% that's the challenge. It's the 95 to 100% that's what is difficult and what makes a difference.
And that's that pursuit of perfection. About. Yes.
Exactly, and that's what we're about: is getting from that 95% to the 100%, or as close as we can possibly get.
Well, you know, and you know, us at ACT and our customers have taken notice of that, and you know, it's the series of fixtures that you've put out with between the Ghibli and the Campson and the Diablo and the Mistral and the Carif that's just been released, and you know, we'll get into some of the you know, IP stuff in a minute, but to see that iteration over time of, you know, brighter output yet miniaturizing is quite impressive. You know, it's not just one direction, it's all directions together and just pushing this nucleus closer and closer, which is very fascinating to bear witness to. So with that, you know, we hear the history of, you know, Ayrton 1.0 or 2.0 and 3.0. So, you know, what drives those decisions in developing a fixture? You know, how do you decide this fixture or that fixture, or which feature over that feature when you put them in these moving lights? And does that end up being driven by what's possible, or what the particular markets is really clamoring for and pounding on your door to make?
So I think that there's always a market element to everything, right? So I think it'd be wrong to say that we don't listen to the market, that the market doesn't drive somewhat of what we do. But I think it's also fair to say that if any engineering company really were to only listen to the market, progress would be pretty stymied. And, you know, again, we can use the example of the Magic Panel 602. Nobody was asking for a square fixture. Yet actually square fixtures are now quite commonplace. You know, the round ones remain, and they're also still quite commonplace, but square also is. So I think so some of it is market driven, and of course, you know, there's no point us releasing a product that is too heavy, too expensive, hasn't got any of the features anybody wants. It doesn't work, right? It can't work. But equally, I think the core driver is firstly what is possible. So how far can we push things, and also can we make the impossible possible? Because I think if we look back again, even 4, 5, 6 years ago, I mean, I don't think anybody would have sat there and said, on an outdoor stadium show, my lighting rig is going to be 100% LED. Because I don't think we could have got our heads around the fact that LEDs just weren't bright enough. You know, we couldn't narrow the angle down enough, collect enough light to get enough light through the optical train. So I think really the core driver here is what's possible, what is impossible that we can make possible, and then of course tinged with a certain amount of reality, and that's where the market comes in. Otherwise we wouldn't sell anything, right? And at the end of the day, we need to sell stuff to survive. So
sure, and then, you know, tinged with that reality is an interesting segue into, you know, reliability. You know, fixture reliability has always been a top priority for designers, especially for the companies who own the fixtures and the technicians on the tour. So, but you have to make this comment, you know, this differentiation between what the fixture can do and how easy is it to service, how reliable it is, which are very two sides of the coin. So when you're making these decisions to build something, how much focus is going towards what this thing can do versus how easy it is to service, so we aren't painting ourselves in a corner of losing our reliability status?
So I think the first thing I would say here is that reliability is critical. I think the days when, as an industry, we were at the cusp of things in the 90s, even early 2000s, where you could get away with releasing a product which failed, but, you know, physically failed. It worked. I mean, light came out of it, people used it, but it broke down a lot. You know, those days are behind us. So I think our products have to be reliable. It's absolutely essential that they are reliable. I also don't think that reliability and serviceability are particularly mutually exclusive. To be perfectly honest, I'll give you an example here. So with the adoption of white light LED technology at high power to replace equivalent metal halide fixtures, we have less heat in the fixture. So when the LED when light is not coming out of the fixture, the LED is off. In a metal halide fixture, when light isn't coming out of the fixture, the shutters are closed. The lamp is still on, yes, at reduced current, but still on, still burning, still producing a lot of heat. By their very nature, metal halide fixed lamps are less efficient and, you know, create more heat as a byproduct. So even when we're outputting, still there's more heat in the fixture. Heat is our enemy. Everything ages faster the more it's heated. It's not good. The plastics age faster, the belts age faster, everything ages, the glass ages. It's not helpful. So we've got less heat. So what we could have done was we could have said, right, less heat, light engine lasts thousands of hours. Let's not worry about how the user can replace it. We could have said that. I mean, that would have been a valid approach to the engineering of the fixture. Lock that light engine away in there because you'll never need to change it. Now, the reality is there are very few occasions when you do need to change it. That is the reality. That's borne out over now many years of data. As you said, you know, we've got the data and we spend a lot of time worrying about that data. However, we've been very, very careful and very clear to ensure that if you do want to replace the light engine on all our fixtures, you can. And it's about a 10-minute process. It's not very difficult. And that's built in at the engineering end to ensure serviceability of the fixtures. And we essentially take the same approach to the entire fixture.
So, you know, back to the different iterations, you know, so version, you know, Ayrton 4.0, maybe is it safe to say Ayrton 3.5 was, you know, introducing IP fixtures? This year, we saw Ayrton introduce
Mm.
two of them, which were hard edge profile fixtures.
Mhm.
Do you see that feature becoming standard in the market moving
Mm.
forward, or will these all-weather IP rated fixtures always be a specific feature based upon the need of the customer?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think, yeah. So how to answer? Um, on one level, I think the trade-offs involved in IP65 fixtures have become less. So I think the single biggest trade-off before the last year and a half-ish has been weight and size. So there seemed to be a need for IP fixtures to always be enormous and very, very heavy. So I think one thing that we've managed to do with the two IP65 fixtures we've released, the Perseo and the Domino, so far, is ensure that for the output you're getting, you're not really much heavier or much larger than its equivalent non-IP fixture.
Yeah, there doesn't seem to be a compromise when it comes to weight and size.
Yeah, so that's a little bit heavier, a little bit bigger, but not significantly. And that was by design, because we honestly believe that, particularly from rental, less so from a fixed installation perspective, because that's a different kettle of fish. You're going to buy what you need for that fixed installation. But from a rental perspective, why shouldn't you be able to utilize your IP65 fixture both outside in the festival season, for example, and inside when you're not working outside? I mean, that should be possible, right? Make one investment, not two. And that's what led essentially the development process for both Perseo and Domino, because honestly, there isn't a reason why you shouldn't use a Perseo inside. And there are other reasons as well to use an IP65 fixture. It's not just about the water ingress rating, right? All of us, I think, when we hear IP65, think water protection, weatherization. The number 6, so the first number in that IP65 is dust ingress protection. There's dust everywhere. There's dust indoors as well as outdoors. So arguably, and I think it's a reasonable argument to make, if you put an IP65 fixture inside, it's just going to rain cleaner.
Let's just set aside 2020 because nobody wants to talk about it. Nobody wants to think about it. But so can we talk a little bit about what's in store for Ayrton in the years ahead? What kind of things do you expect to see, let's say at NAMM in 2022, that will, God willing, and we'll all be able to be at in person and maybe even beyond. You mentioned earlier a little bit about, solid state laser technology as kind of a next step. Is that something that we expect to see in the coming months or the coming years?
So I think from a technology perspective, just so we understand why laser is important, because sometimes people hear laser and it's fad or it's green effect lighting that you see in nightclubs and stuff like that. So laser is important because LED can't get narrow enough to create very, very, very tight beams. So 0.1 degree, 0.2 degree, 0.3 degree beams. Why do we want beams? We want beams so we can get long throws out of them, really nice defined light in effect area. So we want beams. LED is not the best technology for it. We need to put great big lenses in front of them, and we lose too much efficiency. So laser is our friend here. So we want laser for this. And this is why we want laser. Laser's been around for a while. In fact, we've got a fixture in engineering, which was actually finished. All the molding was done 3 years ago now. We never released it because cost, efficiency, size, weight didn't make sense for the market. But we've got quite a lot of experience with laser technology. And therefore, when the technology becomes mature enough, when the balance between output, efficiency, cooling, of course, that's important, and cost is at the right level.
I'd like to add quality as well, because my experience with Ayrton is that you're not just throwing products out there because it's a cool new thing. It's like you guys don't hit the market with something until you're comfortable with it being a quality product.
Yes, it has to work, right? It has to be quality both in reliability terms, but also in the way the beam works, in the way the output, the quality of the light, if you like. These are all important. So that is the future, but that doesn't mean that LED isn't here to stay around, right? I mean, laser is good for a very specific part of what we do. LED will continue to be perfect for all the other things. I think again, looking to the future, if we're looking to see what the next generation of Ayrton looks like, it's not only technology driven, so it isn't only the concept of laser, but I think more extreme miniaturization. I think that's important. That's certainly a core focus for us, and then also maybe a look back at some of our past. Doing. Now we've got the workhorse fixtures, and they won't go away. We're not going to stop those. Those continue. We've got more in the pipeline, more to come this year. But essentially, look back at our roots and do some really, really cool stuff that can also sit alongside as eye candy, the workhorse stuff that we do.
Well, that would be exciting. I'd like to see some of that moving forward as well. So what? When we get back to all this and get back out in the field, we're definitely going to, do the rounds and let everybody see these products that we have from Ayrton. Until then, Ayrton has an amazing website that has some great product videos that show these fixtures in grand detail, along with all the specifications. And of course, us at ACT, we're happy to answer any of those technical questions or pricing questions, or even service type questions. So, we're here for you. Thank you, Chris, for your time today. I really appreciate it. Hopefully next time that you're in the States, we can get together and have a beer at the pub.
Absolutely. Can't wait.